Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. Today, to help me introduce this episode, I've got my daughter Haley with me. What's up? Psyched to have her here. But before I get into that, let's start with this. If you haven't checked it out already, go to verticalhelicast.com to check out not only this podcast, but the Hangar Z podcast, the Helicopter podcast, and the MRO podcast. And I also want to say thank you to the sponsors of this episode, Ready Swimmer, physical training and mental preparation for those called to serve. Get your full workout plan at readyswimmer.com. And the Real ResQ Store. Get all your podcast gear at therealresqstore.com.
Now, welcome back for a second time with stories that you haven't heard before, Mr. Harry Knight.
Let's go.
Okay.
That was awesome.
Okay,
Is that good? All right.
that was probably good. Probably fine.
My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ podcast. Today I've got a guest who already came on with us, and I was pumped to have you on. As a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about this, it was Trey Blake that reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, dude, you need some Navy guys on there." And I was like, "Well, help me get them." So you were one of the guys that came on, and you're like, "Man, I got a story I can share." So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Harry Knight. He was episode 84, and specifically, you came on and you talked about your biggest rescue while you were in the Navy, which was an F-14 air crew after they ejected into the water, and that earned you a Navy Commendation Medal. The story was epic. I was like, "Oh my God!" So
yeah, I still remember it all, like, man.
I love it too. But you didn't end there. You have more to tell, because after your Navy career, you really dove into the EMS world, and you've been in EMS for like 20 years.
Yep, and enjoying it. Still going at it. Even old. Dude,
I can't believe that. That's amazing. You know what? Yes, I can. Of course I can. We love what we do. That's why.
Indeed. Once you get that adrenaline rush, it doesn't stop.
Dude,
that's what it's all about.
Every day. That's what it's all about. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Harry, thanks for coming back on, man. I'm looking forward to the next set of stories and stuff that you have from your EMS world, and this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for joining me again.
Me too, brother. Me too. You bet.
What have you been up to? Anything good?
Just waiting to see some Orioles games, as we discussed.
Well, I'm sorry. I threw up in my mouth a little. Look at you guys already swept us. I know the season is early. There's a lot of baseball left. Come on, man.
But we had to continue from our first episode. We got to continue that tradition, man. We got to continue. If it's football season, it'll be Steelers and Patriots discussion. So we'll wait till football season for another episode.
You know what?
Glad to be back here with you, man. Glad to be back.
I think there's internet issues. I think there's a recording issue. I'm gonna have to let you go. Actually, I'll tell you what.
You got Rotor calling needs to go out, right? Rotor needs an emergency outdoor break. That's what it is.
Oh, that's funny. You know what? I'll tell you what. I'll jump on board with the Orioles as soon as they're playing the Yankees.
Deal. You come to Camden Yards. I got the tickets. I got the beer. And I got the crab fries for us, so we'll be good to go.
Oh,
be good to go.
That's what I'm talking about.
I got you.
It'll be a good time.
I got you.
Yes.
You wear your red, I'll have my orange.
Yes.
As long as we're both going against the Yankees, we're good to go, man. We're good to go.
I'm in. I can't promise I'll wear like the orange Orioles shirt, but
you can wear that red shirt. It'd be fine because you're rooting against the Yankees. That's all that matters, man.
Okay.
Teamwork. We're good to go on that one, man. We're good to go on that one.
Harry, if this is the way this whole conversation is gonna go, I'm like beyond stoked right now. This is gonna be great.
You said you got all day from me. You said it.
I do.
I'm just following in. I'm just following in your lead, brother. just following in your
Oh
lead.
gosh, it's gonna be great. It's
So,
gonna be great.
yeah,
Well, I'll tell you what, man. Let's do this. A little recap. Just you talked in episode 84 like how you got into the Navy, how you got into being a rescue swimmer in the Navy. But I want to back up a little bit further than that because um, you and I had been talking a little bit offline about one of the episodes that we released, and Bobby O'Donnell, who is an EMS guy, he's a air medic up in Boston. He had an interesting rescue. He saved his friend from drowning in a lake, and you actually had something similar happen, which we didn't talk about, which really drove a passion of yours into CPR and
yeah.
getting people certified, getting people qualified, being an instructor for, you said like how long? 20 plus years? 20?
40 years now.
Oh yeah, whatever. Let's double it. That's cool. Yeah, 40 years. 40 years as an instructor.
Back my young days when I was a rescue swimmer instructor in my squadron, they needed an instructor, and I jumped at the opportunity. And I proudly say I've been teaching ever since, and I've never let my certification expire because I do enjoy it. It is a passion of mine because I've seen firsthand and heard from people that I've taught where it's made an impact on people's lives. So it's something I really have a passion for, big time. I'm not gonna
That's
lie one
awesome.
bit about that. So
Cool. All right. Well, let's bring it back. So let's start. I know you were a young kid at the time, and if I remember correctly, just from reading over stuff, you were in high school when
Yep.
this event happened. I'll tell you what. I don't even want to hit it. Go. What happened?
Oh, yeah. So where I went to high school in Ellison High School in Central Killeen, Texas. Again, the Fort Hood, Texas area. The you remember from our previous episode, the Army town that caused me to join the Navy. But they had a tradition between the junior and senior year. A bunch of the soon-to-be seniors would go out to this lake on the Army base and have a big party, weekend party. Of course, we're all underage, so there's no alcohol involved. But we're out there having a good time. One of our buddies does the dives off the pier, and we're like, "Hey, where's Joe?" So we thought he was joking around. He's staying underwater for a while. All of a sudden, he ain't coming back up, and it's been a while. We're like, "Oh, this ain't good." So we all go running in the water and diving down, floundering around. One of the guys found him, drug him out. He wasn't breathing. We did what we thought was CPR because nobody there was trained in CPR. We're talking 1980s. Cell phones weren't available like they were. So somebody got in their truck and drove to get to a phone to make a phone call to get the fire and EMS there. They got there and, they pretty much pronounced him dead on the scene. Basically, when he dove in, he had broke his neck, typical things you're not supposed to do. So it had an impact on us because, we're all there watching all this unfold. And, again, 17 years old, so we're like, wow, this is kind of weird. So a bunch of us decided to get CPR trained just because of what we saw. And we had no clue. I mean, we were pushing and we were doing things that obviously weren't CPR. So a bunch of us got CPR trained, kind of like in a memory to him. Then ironically, a couple weeks later, after I had a card in my wallet, I had the neighbor came banging on our door because her 4-month-old baby stopped breathing. I'm like, oh crap, Harry's running into action into this one. Again, cell phones weren't readily available, so it's not like I could just pop my phone open, dial 911 and go to it. I kept telling the lady, call 911 while I was, checking on this baby. And being a parent now and being a grandparent now, I can understand where she was in a state of shock where she couldn't function. Her baby was blue and just limp. So I did what my instructor taught us, and I teach people, use the baby size to your advantage. I heard somebody outside cutting grass. I picked the baby up, went outside, flagged them down. They called. End up, we were doing, the Heimlich maneuver, which we can't say that now, the abdominal thrust now, on the baby. Got the thing out, got the baby breathing again because the baby had choked on something. So that had an impact. So, from when I started with CPR, I got into it real early. So that was kind of like an eye opener as well, that, I was kind of glad that I had the training that I had. So then in my early days, when I was a rescue swimmer in my helicopter squadron in North Island, San Diego, they needed a CPR instructor because, in my community, we only had one crewman. Some of the other Navy platforms had two crewmen. So, they had a dry crewman, a wet crewman, and one of them is usually an EMT. For us, we just had CPR and first aid training. So I got certified as a CPR instructor. So every year when everybody had to requalify, do the jumps and all that, do the test, do the physical fitness test, they got their CPR, recertified and stuff like that. And I teach, at the volunteer firehouse that I'm at in the community that I'm in. But yeah, it's something that I enjoy teaching because it has a huge impact on people without a doubt.
For
Like we were
sure.
talking about before, there'll be times I sit at the firehouse and we'll hear calls go out where they'll be say subject not breathing, CPR instructions are being given, and we'll hear whether it's the ambulance unit, the fire chief, the fire truck. They get on the scene, they say, "Be advised, subject has a pulse and is breathing now." And the only reason that is because the dispatchers were talking the people through. I mean, the one that sticks out in my head was a 12-year-old girl. It turns out she had given CPR to her grandmother and got her back.
Oh, wow.
The station I volunteer at now, we had one of our new members, her mother-in-law went into cardiac arrest, and same thing, no clue how to do CPR. The dispatchers provided instructions. She was breathing again before, and this was before I joined this department, but before the ambulance got on the scene, her mother-in-law was breathing, and now she's a member at our station that responded to help out. So CPR has an impact. I mean, it's something, I teach at the firehouses. I've taught at schools. I teach at doctor's office. Somebody calls me up and say, "Hey, we need CPR training, but there's only one of us." I'm like, "I don't care. That's one person. I'll take the time to teach you." But yeah, it's something, so the folks that are out there listening, man, if spread the word, there are places to get the training done, and it has an impact. It has a huge impact on people's lives. So it's something I definitely enjoy big time. So it's pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff.
Man, that's great. I'm with you. I'm with you a lot. I used to. I don't do it. I haven't done it in a while, but I used to teach CPR, ACLS, PALS, at the local hospital years ago, and it was one of my favorite things to do. I loved it. I think my favorite thing is when you have either older nurses come in or nurses that haven't, I'm going to call it, worked out in a little while. And I made everybody do 2 full minutes of CPR. I said, start, go. And they're sweating, breathing heavy. I'm like, that was only 2 minutes. Like,
yeah, yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned ACLS and PALS because people know that I'm a American Art CPR instructor. They say, "Hey, do you teach ACLS and PALS?" I'm like, "Nope, that is not my swim lane. Sorry, I can't help you there." But I do the same thing where I used to work at. We would teach because the active duty Navy people, they needed CPR as one of their things that they would be working on, and that whole part of check for breathing, no response, call 911. So me and the other instructor, if people didn't call 911 during their scenario, we would just sit back and we would let them do CPR until they would look at us and we'll say, "You guys didn't call 911. There's no help on the way." Because I try, because CPR is a very it's a very emotional and it could be a very challenging thing. So when I teach CPR, if you ever get a chance, I don't know if you ever watched the show The Office, but there's an episode about CPR. So I tie that clip in when I teach CPR, and because they say, she says there's no help on the way because nobody called 911. And then there's also another video if you ever get a chance. There's a high school volleyball girl. I want to say it was in Tennessee or something like that. She went into sudden cardiac arrest, and the school had a code blue team. So luckily they knew how to do CPR. It's all on video. She's playing volleyball. She gives it a hit, and boom, she's down for the count within seconds. Her heart said, "Oh, that's it, I'm done." Not the typical, I could be talking to you during this whole podcast, feeling it. She was out. So I use it because it raises the awareness, and it's not just older people that have heart conditions that go into cardiac arrest, but they get the girl back after 4 minutes of CPR, and it's still 7 minutes before the ambulance shows up. So a total of 11 minutes from when she goes down till the ambulance crew shows up. Obviously, they had her back in between. But I tell people that's why the more people that know it, the better, because they've done studies. For every minute that goes down, that person's chance of survival goes down 7 to 10%. So I say if nobody knew CPR, they had to wait for that ambulance to show up 11 minutes later. She's lucky if she had single digits % chance of survival. So it's a video that I use. So when one of the schools I taught at, I forgot I had that video in there, and it just came up. And once we got done with it, the teachers that were there, they're like, can we take a moment? That was kind of like, because it hit them close to home because it happened at a school. And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot that was in there. Cause when I teach, I'm in a rhythm. It just goes.
Right.
But they appreciated seeing that because they realized that's why they're there, because you just never know. It could be anybody at any age. So yeah. So it's something that's there. I mean, American Heart, Red Cross, there's other organizations that teach it. So, it's proven fact. More people that know it, the better. More the better, because it has an impact, huge impact on people. So,
for sure.
And I tell people, like you probably remember, I mean, AEDs at one point in time, the only people that were trained to use AEDs were medically trained people. Now it's John Doe citizen gets trained because they've realized that whole chain of survival, it has an impact. The sooner you can get that in there and shock them, if it's a shockable rhythm, and there's a lot of people that don't realize it's not there to start the heart, it's there to get it back in rhythm. There's going to be times where it's going to say no shock advised because there's nothing it can do. But if it can do something, it makes a huge difference. So, for those that are out there listening, man, make some phone calls, get that training. It's good.
Absolutely. I actually remember in some of my classes, I would tell people like, hey, the next time you're at the mall, walk through the mall and just watch on the wall. Like, there's fire extinguishers there. Well, there's AEDs on the wall too. The next time you're flying through an airport, just randomly, oh, look, there's an AED on the wall. They have them in bigger public spaces now. And you can absolutely.
And that's why they're there.
Yeah. And those of us that know how to use it is great. It's the people that, and those that don't know, there are directions. You open it up. It says open here, and then it talks to you.
Yep. And that's what I tell people. I said, even if you don't know what it is, but you know what it's for, you turn it on. As long as you can figure out how to turn it on, it's a green button. Press the button. It tells you everything you need to do. And I just tell people the one thing you got to watch out for is before you hit that shock button, make sure nobody's touching, because if they're touching within that line, it's gonna get their attention. And I've seen some EMS providers that were still touching the patient. They're like, oh, hey. So not enough to knock them out, but it gets their attention. So yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, the CPR. I mean, it's like I said. When I listened to this episode, when I was walking my dog, I was like, I gotta get on Quinn. We gotta keep pushing that, because it really hit me close, because it's a passion I have. I really enjoy it. So for those that are out there, if you're not sure how to find out, get a hold of Quinny, get a hold of me. I can help you steer you in the right direction. Wherever you're at, there's resources available. It's, some places will charge a little money, but it's money well spent if you can save. Because I've had times where I've taught people and they come back and they say, hey, we're at a restaurant. I didn't have to do CPR on somebody, but somebody was choking, so I had to do the abdominal thrust on them, and they started breathing again. That's what it's all about, So, and like me, a lot of times you don't get to hear those feedback from somebody that you taught. So, when I was able to get people come back to me, granted, when we run calls at the firehouse, I see the guys in action that I'm teaching. So, we see the immediate feedback. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes, you don't always get a good outcome. But it's nice when I teach people out in town that they know me. They're like, hey, Harry, I had to do this and it helped, man. I really appreciate it. The way you taught it really made sense, So, yeah, it's like I said, we could go on the whole episode just CPR, but yeah, it's a passionate thing, and I think more people that jump on it, the better. It's something that people really need to look into, or I recommend people look into. It could be a family member at a family event you help out. So yeah, it's always
or
something.
Even, and it could be as simple as somebody, one of the kids, grandkids, cousins, nephews, somebody's choking on something, and now you're there to help.
Because as we're talking, you got 3 daughters. I've got kids. I tell people I got them on me. My youngest son here. It's
tattooed on the arm,
upside down. But
buddy.
Yeah. So my youngest son that says that's when I get Alzheimer's. I can remember all their names. I can't confirm or deny that, but you never know. But as we know, those of us that are parents, when the kids get to that crawling age, they turn into a human vacuum cleaner. They don't know. They see a marble, they see a penny. Yeah. So and when those things happen, it happens real quick, and you don't have time to sit and wait. Like some of the places I volunteer in Southern Maryland, even an ambulance coming to you, lights and sirens to help you, could be 10, 15, 20 minutes, because, it's a rural area. So, but yeah, so for those, so that's my tangent on CPR. It's something I'm passionate about, and I recommend more people, the better. More people, the better.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that for sure. I'm gonna divert now though, and one of the reasons you mentioned a couple times, like you've done a lot of volunteer work, and conveniently enough, you actually did so much volunteer work that the Navy gave you a medal.
Yeah, man.
I didn't even know this
Candy,
medal
bling, bling.
existed. Right? I mean, pin that on your chest, shine that baby up.
I didn't know it existed until that time came. Yeah, matter of fact, it's in that shadow box right back there somewhere. But yeah,
It's beautiful. It's so funny. But I'm going to read it because I got a little kick out of it. I was like, oh, look at that. So here's what's funny is that you actually got a letter from the local Lexington Park Volunteer Rescue Squad for all your volunteer service. And this is July 14th, 1998. And this was addressed to your command saying that AW1 Harry O. Knight of your command is one of these committed individuals. Vital pre-hospital services are rendered efficiently and promptly by caregivers at no cost to the patient. This service is made possible by the dedicated people in our community, giving hundreds of hours each year to train, study, stand by, and run calls. So that landed this, which is cool, and this is the let's see, Department of the Navy subject award of the Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal. Again, I didn't even know this existed, so it's super cool. I'm going to read number 1 and number 4 out of this. So, in accordance with the reference A, you are authorized to wear the Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal for outstanding service with the American Youth Soccer Organization, August 1994 through March 1995, the Southern Maryland Youth Soccer Organization, July 1995 through October 1995, the Naval Air Station Patuxent River Boy Scout Troop 416, October 1995 through July 1996, and the Lexington Park Volunteer Rescue Squad, June 1996 through July 1998. And number 4 out of that, it says, lastly, you have been an extremely active member of the Lexington Park, Maryland Volunteer Rescue Squad. In 2 years of volunteer service, you have devoted over 4,000 off-duty hours and earned numerous awards, including a top runner award for the most call response in a calendar year. Through your involvement, you have directly affected the local and military communities, providing a much-needed volunteer ambulance service and saving numerous lives as an emergency medical technician. Dude, I can't believe we didn't even talk about this in the first episode. What? So that
I didn't think
cool.
about it till I started hearing you know all the other first responder type. I'm like, you know what, I got a few of those things we can chat about as well. But yeah, I had a couple of years there where I was putting in with kids, as being the soccer coach because nobody else wants to be the soccer coach, being the scout leader because nobody wanted to raise the hand. So yeah, there's a lot of volunteer time, but then so when I was at the squadron I was at there in Pax River, which is the easier version of St. Patuxent River, that's when I was in my P3 days. So some of the helo guys that were there knew me from my helicopter days. They're like, hey Harry, a bunch of us run with this rescue squad out in town, you ought to come join us. I'm like, okay. They said they pay for the training, be an EMT, evac, drive the ambulance. So I joined up, and like you said, the 1 year I was a top runner, and as we had discussion, when you suddenly become a single man, there ain't a whole lot else to do. So there were times I was literally living the whole weekend at the rescue squad and getting in trouble because we were only supposed to do 24 hours duty without permission from one of the officers from the station. But I'd literally be there from Friday afternoon till Monday morning because I had nothing else to do. But I enjoyed it. It got me started.
I got to touch on this a little bit because this is great, and there's a reason this is great. So you were going through I'm gonna call it a tough time. Is that a good way to put it?
That's a politically correct way to say it. The big D. That's just how life goes.
Yeah. So the significant other is no longer a significant other, and which is terrible. And I'm sorry to hear that. I truly am. Like, congratulations. I'm sorry. Both in the same sentence. All right. Depends on which way you need me to go. But the cool part about this is you were going through a tough time in your life, and you actually made it a good thing. Like you turned it into a positive in your life. And that's awesome. Yeah. And a lot of people have a hard time. Nope. I'm not going to say a lot of people because I don't like doing that. I'm going to say I personally have been through some times where I'm like, man, this sucks. And in turn, I try to do something good to offset the trouble I'm going through at that moment in time. And I hope other people do that as well.
It definitely helped. It helped because when people are going through tough times in life, it can bring you down emotionally. Big time. And I've seen it happen, and I'm sure you've seen it happen. And, there's been some recent events in this area that people have gone through some tough times, and unfortunately they've made very traumatic, bad decisions now that, some stuff that's happened recently. But so I needed something to occupy my mind because I didn't, I was still in my, in my Navy career. I didn't need anything to bring me down to affect my Navy career. So, and it was something that, my friends told me about it. So so I jumped on it, and I'm glad I did because, I've been doing it for, probably just over 20 years now, and I enjoy it. And when I first started out in the Southern Maryland has 3 counties. There's Charles County, Calvert County, and St. Mary's County. That's what's considered Southern Maryland, those 3 southern counties. And if you look at a map, you can kind of see why. But at one point in time, fire and EMS services were 100% volunteer. 100% volunteer. Now each of those counties do have some paid EMS services, but there's still a large volunteer presence. And, like the station that I've currently volunteer at is all volunteer. But it's serving the community, and there's a lot of things that even as a volunteer that we, shootings, stabbings, delivering babies, you name it, anything they see in the big city, we can see it in as a volunteer in the southern community where it's not so populated. Get a little bit of everything, and the training's free. You can't beat that. Any free training is good training. Really, any training is good training. But still, if you ain't got to pay for it, it's even better. It's a bonus.
Right.
So, but
that's cool.
And
good for you. Well, smart man to spend 4,000 hours at a station to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Bro,
and they do it.
Smart man right there, dude.
Yep. And the station I was at was a very active station because the area, the community was a very populated community because it's right outside the base. So, it's a large community there. And the nice thing is a lot of people that were there were either military or former military because a lot of people retire in that area. So it was very structured. Even though it was a volunteer, we were very structured. We had, people assigned to ambulances. We'd have a duty schedule. Everybody sign up. And we always, even though we're volunteer, we always had an ambulance on duty 24 hours a day. We always had it. And with these guys that I worked with from the hangar on base, Monday was our training day. So we would actually bring the ambulance on base and run calls out in town. And when we got these write-ups for that award, our CO said, you know what? I want you guys parking up front of the hangar. You guys get that front parking spot on Mondays when you bring the ambulance in. And when you guys want to call, I want you to hit that siren before you go. Cause he goes, I want everybody to know my sailors are going out there saving lives. So he was all about it. He loved it. He thought it was great that his sailors were putting in time to serve the community, saving lives. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
That is very cool. I like the command that supported you as well. Like that's always good to have when you have the backing of the command saying, hey, you know what? We like this. I mean, you're making your service look good. You're making the Navy look good. You're making the command look good.
Yep.
So I'm all about
big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And
nice.
with that award, you needed to have X number of hours to get that award. And when they first came out with that award, all the guys that ran the rescue squad were like, yeah, we've got that. So we put ourselves in. I mean, we were like, I wouldn't be surprised if we were some of the first people that ever got it because as soon as they heard about it, they jumped on it. So it is kind of ironic. It was some easy bling bling from the Navy, but you know how it is. You got to make those things look good. You got to make those things look good.
Absolutely. What else can I hang on my uniform? Let's go.
Exactly. Yep. So
that's funny.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
Right,
good times. Good times for sure.
So, out of curiosity, like I love the first rescue side of stories, but do you remember your first like EMS call?
So I do remember my first. So the way it was here, the station, everybody had to have CPR training. There's some incident command training that everybody's required to have. There's a baseline. So the first time I ran duty, I was a third. I was what was considered an aide. I was like, hey, go get this, go get this, go get that. You're kind of the gopher because I was only CPR trained. But we had the call go out for a diabetic emergency. I'm like, okay, I know what that is. I don't know what to do, but I'm here to help. So we get in there, and unfortunately, this guy was what we call a priority 4. He was deceased. Rigor mortis had set in, the whole 9 yards. So it was in a part of town that wasn't the best part of town. And anytime we get calls like that, the local sheriff's office, the police responds as well. So we're in there. We're like, oh great, you got family out in the other room. Everybody's hysterical. We're in the bedroom with this guy, and we're like, yeah, he's obviously deceased. So we call on our medical radio to the local doctor, say, hey, here's our situation. We're not in a very good situation as a crew. We're going to do CPR for the family's sake to the ambulance, and then we will bring him to the hospital, to the morgue, so you guys can do what you do. Because the deputy that was on the scene was a rookie deputy. It was his first day being cut loose. And it was getting to be a crowd outside. And not that it was a violent crowd, but we didn't want to just walk out saying, okay, we're done. And everybody'd be yelling like, how come you're not doing anything? So, because that can turn into a very uncomfortable situation. So we had a plan in place. We're going to do CPR for the family's sake. The volunteer medic that came, I'm not going to mention any names. We told him, hey, here's what we're doing. He's like, okay. So he goes out and tells the family, sorry, your uncle, dad is deceased. We're like, what happened to our plan that we just had? So the family is going hysterical, and we had a plan in place, and we told him the plan, but for some reason he decided to pull a little spin on our plan. So we're like, oh great. So we still end up taking loading him on the ambulance, not doing anything, and not faking anything, as you might say. But we were, just because of the situation, we already we decided we're going to take the body up to the hospital so they can put him in the morgue, just because it was getting to be at that time the crowd was getting a little restless because everybody was hysterical with somebody passing away. So we're going up the road. We got the gentleman on the stretcher covered up. I'm sitting on the bench seat. The EMT is up in the front in the captain's seat. And I looked at her and I said, if he moves, I'm jumping out the door. And she looked at me. Her eyes got like, boom. She goes, Harry, I didn't need to hear that. So, yeah, so that was my first one. Unfortunately, wasn't anything we can do, but that was my icebreaker into running EMS as a volunteer. So it was interesting. It was interesting for sure. So,
yeah, I'm sorry that the message didn't come through clear enough as far as what the plan was.
Yeah,
that's tough.
We thought it was clear.
Gotta be on the same page.
There were some serious discussions afterwards because we in the rescue squad, we have officers that are like, they oversee, they have certain responsibilities, and the guy riding the seat as the OIC, as we call it, the EMT in charge, he was one of the officers there. So he made it clear, but apparently it wasn't clear. So afterwards, there were chief from one station to chief of the other station discussions on what happened, and some things got cleared up. But yeah, so it happens. We learned. We moved forward. Another, it was just another day, unfortunately. But yeah, so that was my icebreaker into being a volunteer EMS type person. So yeah.
Wow.
Just like the first helicopter rescues, you remember them. You remember them. So they're eye openers for sure.
When you started doing your volunteer stuff and you have that EMS call like that, was there a way you ended up bringing that back into the Navy as far as your rescue swimmer side of things? And was there a lot of thought that went back and forth between to tie the two together?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of just making communications and making sure things get tied in together, learning from things. Just like when you run a rescue in a helicopter, you come back and you discuss how things, what worked good, what didn't work good. And we always have those kind of calls, especially after big calls, we'll have a a crew resource type meeting on, what was good, what was bad, how can we make this better? And a lot of those things get tied into how we do our things at the station. And even that's how they do a lot of things for the state, EMS protocols. They go through all these things. How do they make things better, to learn from lessons and to move forward? So.
Right on. Yeah, I that's cool. That's cool. That's actually, like I look back at some of my my personal Coast Guard career wise, and I, I didn't, I don't think I took EMT serious enough. And I'll be the first one to throw myself under the bus. I wish I had, I don't even want to say I wish I had, but at one point or another, I should have taken my own initiative to do more. It wasn't until I got out of the Coast Guard, and then all of a sudden I'm working with like FPC paramedics, which were legit. And I'm like, oh my God, I really don't know enough. And that's where I took the initiative to go get my paramedic certification. So the fact that you were doing it while you were in the Navy and you could tie the two together, I think it's wonderful. And knowing what I know now, again, that hindsight being 2020, I wish I had done that a little bit more while I was in the service. I think it would have just been, for me, it would have been better patient care in the back, number one. And number two is I can help my flight mechanic who was not EMT, was not trained in medical. They might have a CPR card, but that way I could instruct a little bit better. So for anybody out there that's doing that, maybe that's for you, maybe it's not, but it definitely is something I look at now. I'm like, oh, that should have been something I should have done. Hey.
Yeah, it's like we talked about, because my son has also joined in the volunteer services, because it's a thing around here. His grandfather did it. I did it. His mom was a volunteer. His mom and grandfather are both, paid paramedics and stuff like that. And he's followed that route. So when he first started out, EMS wasn't his thing. But as we've talked about, he's got his paramedic now. And I've seen him in action. And we've talked before about, bragging. He's come a long way. And I've seen him on calls where he'll have somebody on the crew that's, again, only CPR trained, but he's got the experience, even though he's only 22, to guide them and give them instructions on what they can do to help that patient. So like I said, getting that extra training. He's always telling me, Dad, when are you going to take paramedic? I'm like, I'm old enough now. I'm good where I'm at. I said, they always say EMTs keep paramedics out of trouble. That's the level I'm good at. I don't need to be I want to be there to keep you out of trouble, as he jokingly laughs about it. But so, yeah, but so a lot of it ties into, how you do things there, bring in your military background, your military bearing, your experience, and, discipline to be able to do those things helps tie it in to get those things done the right way. I will say it definitely, it helped me without a doubt.
Now that you say that, it's so true. Like everything that we bring from the military to, I'm going to call it the civilian sector or outside of the military. I mean, to fall back, like I wish I had done that in reverse as well. Like bring it into the military. And I know guys that did. I was just not one of them. And bad on me for it. You learn as you go. That's all there is to it.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Right, you actually had a call that stands out to you where you had to help a child. What was that?
So we again, a call goes out for injured child, and like anything else, what we get on the ambulance depends on what the 911 call taker gets from the person. And, they said, that they had a, 4-year-old child that was injured. I'm like, okay, broken arm, broken hand, somebody's playing on the playground or something like that. So we're going there again. I'm in the back. I'm just CPR trained. And, we had the crew up front. And as we're pulling up into the neighborhood where the call was, I'm sticking my seat, turning around from the cabin seat, looking up through the tunnel. And as we pull up, I see this lady holding this child, and the child was just limp like a rag doll. And I was like, whoa, this ain't good. So I jump out of the back. I go run and grab the child, get the kid in the back of the ambulance. Again, I'm only CPR trained, so I'm checking for breathing, checking for a pulse, breathing, pulse. Breathing wasn't very good, but the EMP gets in the back and the kid's unconscious. So, for our protocols, they called for a helicopter unit. So in Maryland, they use the Maryland State Police as a huge resource for medevacs, depending on where you're at. If you're away from a local, whether it be a trauma center, a specialty hospital, there's a certain protocols and at back then you could call for a helicopter regardless. Now there was a mishap with one of the state troopers several years ago where they had an incident where they picked up, and at the time they had the Dolphin, so they had a pilot and a medic. They had a call where was a car accident, so they had 2 patients, and they took one of the volunteer care providers. But that incident, the weather was bad. The helicopter crashed, didn't avoid some trees, and the only person that survived was one of the patients who was strapped to the backboard. On a rainy night in Southern Maryland. Unfortunately, everybody passed away. So that changed how they used the Maryland State Police as far as resources for medevacs. But back then, you could call for anything. So they called for a helicopter. Again, it was the old Dolphin, which we know you're very familiar with. They had a pilot and medic. So the medic was like, "Can anybody fly with me? I need an extra set of hands on this call." So I'm like, "I'm only CPR trained, but I'll go." He goes, "I'll take you. I just need somebody to bag this child while we're flying to the hospital." I'm like, granted, then you're supposed to be EMT trained, but he just needed a set of hands, so I jumped at the opportunity because being somebody who flies in helicopters, I'm that guy. You hear a helicopter, squirrel. So I loved it. I jumped at the I jumped at the opportunity. So so my job was just bagging this kid as we're going up to Children's Hospital up in DC. While I learned a lot at what paramedics do. I got to see somebody doing IO. Never seen that before. No clue what it was. So that was interesting.
Drill it in the bone.
Yeah, where they drill in the bone so they can give fluids. Yep. So that was interesting. So we drop the kids up. We land at the top of the hospital, Children's Hospital. They bring him in. I'm at the top, just kind of getting a view of DC from the top of the hospital. Everything's good. So they're like, "Okay, hey, before we bring you back down to your area to drop you off, we got to get some fuel." I'm like, "Okay." So they stop at Hangar 2, which is where Trooper 2 was out of Andrews Air Force Base, to get some fuel. And as they're fueling up, they're like, "Hey, we've got a motor vehicle accident. We don't have time to drop you off. We don't want to leave you stranded here. You want to go?" I'm like, "Let's go." So we go. We land on this, where the fire department had the landing site was on a baseball field. They had 2 patients from this motor vehicle accident that were backboarded. So you had the pilot, medic, me, and 2 patients in the back of a Dolphin. Again, Dolphin's not a very big helicopter. So he's talking to me on the ICS saying, "Hey, we have to do what's called a running takeoff. We got to go out here." I said, "Remember, I flew in helicopters for 10 years. I'm good." He goes, "That's right. Okay, cool." So they taxi out all the way out to center field as far as they could, do a running takeoff, and we get airborne as soon as we got by the second base, fly these 2 to the trauma center up in Baltimore, drop them off. And, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Baltimore's got a pretty significant trauma center, John Hopkins Shock Trauma Center, and they bring some pretty serious stuff. So as we're wheeling these 2 ladies into the ER, I'm seeing all kinds of drilling and cutting and stuff going on in all these trauma rooms as we're going into the ER. Pretty wild. So my first time flying on a medevac, I got a 2-for-1 special. I'll show my age. I'll say it's the Kmart 2-for-1 special. A lot of people may not know what that is, but 2 flights in one day. So we get done with that. They go land me back at the hangar. The chief from my rescue squad is there to pick me up. First thing he says, he goes, "Why were you flying? You're not an EMT." I said, "They needed somebody that was CPR trained." He goes, "They knew you weren't an EMT?" I said, "I made it very clear that I'm only CPR trained, and he just needed somebody to bag that patient." He goes, "Okay." He goes, "I just don't want us getting in trouble," because I thought I was in trouble. So it was interesting. Learned a lot. Like I said, like we were talking about before, in Southern Maryland, they really use the Maryland State Police. They also have Park Police up in the DC area. They have a lot of resources for medevacs. And one of your recent episodes, they were talking about it, people worried about, paying a bill. You don't pay for those resources. You may pay for some of the supplies, but like I said, so the volunteer services, our services, they don't get a bill from us. What they used to do is, if we used a non-rebreather, if we used 10 cravats, we put it on their charge sheet. So the hospital charges them. So we get reimbursed, but we don't directly pay everything we did was free. So a lot of people worried about that at times. But yeah, so, in Southern Maryland, when they get the state resource helicopters, they're not paying a bill, even though, as you know, it costs a lot of money for gas and everything. They don't pay for anything. It's all paid for by the government, whether it's state, federal. It's already paid for already. But they're a huge resource in this area, huge resource, because the way it is now is if you're more than 30 minutes away from a specialty like a trauma center, you can call for a helicopter based on the category of the patient, So, but it's a huge resource. So, and like we talked about now, the troopers now have the 139, so they got 2 pilots and 2 medics, and they're all law enforcement. All 4 of them are law enforcement, and they do medevacs, they do mountain rescues. They do a lot of stuff now. Apparently, when they got these helicopters, they went out to San Diego and trained with the San Diego Sheriff's Department on all their hoisting and rappelling techniques and lines and all those kind of things. They went out there because they did the research on, and because San Diego does a lot of stuff out in the mountains and canyons. So that's where they do their training at. So it's a huge resource, and they come out to a lot of stations and land the helicopter so we can be familiar with it on, if something happens, they have an incident landing or taking off, how do we shut it down and stuff like that. So they talk about it. They got some pretty good, they're huge resources, and they stay busy. They stay very busy with medevacs.
That's fantastic. There are a lot of people out there. This one I can legitimately say, there are a lot of people out there that might think they have to pay for a helicopter and get worried like, oh my gosh. And I can't speak for everywhere across the world or even the US. I don't know who charges what, but the one you're talking about, Riverside County Sheriff's Department in California, they don't charge it. It's taxpayer money. It's already there. It's there as a resource. So now knowing that Maryland State Police, awesome. As a matter of fact, I think Delaware is the same thing. And Delaware has a lot of volunteer as well. So, but to have that resource that you don't have to worry of, like, if you're in trouble, make the call. So, it's good stuff.
And honestly, even if you do have to pay, worry about it later. Your life comes first. But that's a whole different topic. We don't need to worry about talking about hospital billing. That's not an avenue I want to go down.
That is not this podcast. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Good way to put it. Good way to put it.
I don't even want to dive into that one. Good night. We need to. Oh yeah. No, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. We're gonna divert real quick to thank our sponsors. Attention all rescue professionals and tactical athletes. Ready Swimmer and the Real ResQ have teamed up to bring you the ultimate solution in tactical athlete training. Developed by military rescue professionals, our team boasts over 60 years of combined experience. Elevate your performance both physically and mentally with our individualized programming. Contact us at readyswimmer.com or through therealrescue.com and unlock your full tactical athlete potential. The question is, are you ready?
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you what. You know what I do is I want to bring up another call out that you had. So before we go on too far, though, you actually earned yourself what the heck is it called? It's Harry Knight was honored for a squad's Rookie of the Year. Booyah! Back in 1996. Wow. Yeah. So not only did you get the Navy Award in 1994, you get this one in 1996.
Life and just being eager to keep myself mentally in good shape, dealing with everybody else's tragedies and emergencies to keep me straight and keep me again occupied, so I'm not going down the woe is me part of life and bringing myself down. But that's pretty much what that came down to. Like we said, I was at the station a lot, so but I don't regret it. I don't regret it one bit. It's something that, again, being able to help somebody else, even though you say, their emergency is not our emergency. I don't know how many times you said that on your podcast, but we try to help them out the best we can. And there are times where we've had to back off because we can't put ourselves in harm to try to save somebody else. So, but yeah.
You know what? Let me ask this question because I am not on the ambulance. I've done my ambulance time. Mostly it was my ride along stuff to get my certification to be a paramedic. But so when I say that, like, their emergency is not our emergency, it really, I emphasize it for the air. Like, as an air ambulance, as an EMS provider in like responding from a helicopter, their emergency is not our emergency, right? I want to
Yep.
focus on the ground right now. So when you say that, what is an incident that you can think of that might be that for you? Like, okay, they're in trouble, but we can't go in at the moment.
So, I mean, one of the most common ones is if there's like a shooting or an overdose or a domestic issue, um, we are told to stage until law enforcement arrives. That is our
Oh, right
standard
on.
protocol.
Okay.
Sometimes the dispatchers will give us the option based on what information they get from the call taker. But shootings and stabbings, yeah, we will stage until the cops say, "Yep, come on in." I'm not going. If there's a gun or knife involved, I'm not putting me or my crew in harm's way. Um, Overdoses can be the same way. They will tell us, and I do know somebody that I went through when I was for a few years. I was a paid part-time EMT in Charles County, Maryland, with the Department of Emergency Services, and they had a protocol you staged, especially for overdoses. I do know one of the paramedics that I went through the academy with. She actually got injured on a call because it was an overdose call. They were transporting to the hospital, and apparently he came out of his high and attacked her in the back of the ambulance. So she screamed. Her driver heard it, pulled over, and he ran around the back and tackled this guy. And of course, they're calling for law enforcement and everything like that. Unfortunately, she had some pretty significant injuries from it, and it ended her career as a paramedic. But yeah, there are times where even as a first responder, even when you have the patient in the back of the ambulance, things can happen. There's certain protocols on overdoses, how, we'll put it down where if we're concerned about somebody if they're on certain drugs, as you know, certain drugs can have a huge impact on how people act and stuff like that. PCP is the big one that seems to make people go batshit crazy. I know you put E for explicit in your thing. So, put tie them down, one arm up, because it's hard for them to get free. But I've had times where we had a guy in what we call soft restraints, which were just kind of like leather straps, and this guy got out of them, and we had to tell our driver stop, and we had the cop following behind us, and he comes and jumps in to put the guy in handcuffs. But the problem is when they put in handcuffs, there's a certain way they got to do it. So there are times, even before you get on the scene and even after you're dealing with the patient, you've got to be careful because, again, we had a call. I mean, we talked about before, we're going to bounce around a little bit because different topics come up when you start bringing things up. But we had a call for a shooting. Wasn't in a very good area outside the base. Law enforcement was there. It's 2:00 in the morning, Saturday morning. Apparently people have been out partying. Somebody got shot. We're dealing with this guy. We're tending to him, and he got shot in the leg and everything like that. And all of a sudden we look up and the cops were gone. Our safety factor didn't exist. We're like, all right, let's get this guy on the stretcher. Let's get in the ambulance and let's get out of here. Because it's a big crowd of people at 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, you never know. For all we know, the shooter could still be somewhere in the crowd. Apparently they got called out for something else that happened, and they didn't tell us they were leaving because there's something else urgent. And I think it might have been something that involved a fellow police officer in an incident. So they were gone, because, like they take care of each other, but there was just wasn't the communication that should have been there. So we were kind of like, yeah, this isn't good. Let's get a move on. We're still bandaging the guy up, but let's bandage and go. Let's roll and go. Let's get a move on here. So yeah, so there are many times as a first responder that things can happen very quickly. Things can change in a spur of a moment, and you got to be ready for it. A lot of times people get used to the mundane, boring things, but that boring incident can change in a heartbeat. You got to be ready for it. If you're not ready for it, you're going to be caught with your pants down, as the saying goes, and it's usually not going to be a good situation. So you've always got to be on your toes. It's like I tell my friends, I've got a motorcycle now, so when I ride, my head's always on a swivel. I'm always expecting. I was talking to some friends of mine. I'm that person as a first responder. I don't know how it is with you, but when I go to a restaurant, I want to sit where I can see the front door. I just got to. I need to be.
That's me.
I need to be aware. Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get it. Some of my coworkers, ironically, they heard about our previous podcast. So one of them, she listened to it on her way to work yesterday. She goes, "Harry, I'm spreading the word about you." She goes, "You're a hero." I'm like, I don't know about that, but she's spreading the word. So that came up in conversation one time, and people don't get it. But as a first responder, I need to be aware. We've gone out with friends where people don't notice things that are going on. I'm like, you didn't notice? They're like, totally no clue. I'm like, It's like I notice everything where it's just one of those things. I don't know if it's from the Navy, the first responder, when I used to do emergency management for the government, but I need to see what's going on. I need to be aware of my surroundings. And unfortunately, the people that don't become aware of their surroundings, they're the ones that are like, oh crap. And then by then it's too late. So
when I go out to dinner with my wife and we like go to a spot, I always tell her, like, I want to be sitting where I can see. I want either a wall behind me or like I want maybe 2 tables behind me and 10 tables in front of me. And we were out not too long ago, and she's like, do you want this seat? Because I know how you like to sit. And I was like, I think we're good here. I'll be all right. But the fact that my son, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. Me and my son have gone out sometimes, and he goes to sit down. And he goes, oh, hold on. This is going to be where you want to sit. I said, exactly. And, since he's a firefighter medic now, he knows why. He understands it. He gets it. But a lot of people don't get it, so it's just one of those things. It's drilled in your head. You've got to be aware of your surroundings. It doesn't matter. I don't care if I'm going to Walmart. I pay attention to things. I look at things because you just never know. Sometimes you get that spidey sense that something ain't right. So, the spidey sense kicks in. It kicks in for a reason. So
totally. Oh my gosh, Harry, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So you and I are going to be battling over the seat we sit in when we go to wherever.
Well,
you know what? You can have it. You're going to protect me, right? That's all I need to know.
It'll look weird if we decide to sit side by side having a beer, but you never know nowadays, right? You save me, I save you. We'll flip for the seat. How's that sound? We'll flip.
Oh, I like that. Okay. I'm good with that one. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. All right, well, let me bring in the next one because I like this too. In 1996, you actually earned yourself a Lexington Park Volunteer Rescue Squad certificate of achievement. So, you're winding them up again. The Navy gives you the volunteer award, and then you get another one in 96 for Rookie of the Year, and now this one that was in 95, and now in 96, this one. And as a matter of fact, specifically, you responded to 201 EMS calls in 1996. Damn, that's a lot. Let's put this in perspective. There's only 365 days in the year. 201 calls. And you're not working every day because you're volunteer and you have a full-time job.
Yep.
Oh my good Lord.
Yeah. So again, in the area I ran in, and some of the other areas in Southern Maryland, some of the places are very busy. They'll get 1,000, 2,000 calls a year, and they can vary from just a basic sick person to a major trauma call. The range that we would see are huge, but again, and there'd be days where we might get a call, drop the patient off the hospital, and the hospital we're at, they had a rescue squad there, but if they already know that we're already on the air, they'll put us on another call. There have been times where I would go to the station, we do our morning check off, get breakfast, whatever the case may be, run a call, and I wouldn't be back to the station until the end of the shift because we just go nonstop. Once we're out on the air, unless we're running out of fuel, or we have, sometimes we'll go out of service for manning reasons. Somebody might have to pick up a kid at a certain time and things like that. So when we're on the air, we're at the mercy of the dispatchers, and they will throw us around. If they know they've got an ambulance that's staffed on the air, they'll use us wherever they need to use us. So there have been days at some of the various different rescue squads where from when I start till the end of my assigned shift time, and sometimes it even overflows, going nonstop. You're stopping at 7-Eleven to grab a hot dog and a soda for lunch, or you're getting something out of the snack machine at the hospital, for lunch. I've had days like that, but there were a few times where I'd have my sunglasses on, and next thing I know, it's nighttime. I'm still wearing sunglasses because they're prescription, because I haven't had a chance to get back to the station to get my regular glasses. I'd show up at the hospital with my Ray-Ban sunglasses on. The nurses, you get to know the ER people pretty good in the small areas. They're like, "Why are you wearing sunglasses while you're driving?" I said, "So I can see." I said, "Yeah. Otherwise, everything's fuzzy otherwise." So they just kind of laugh. But I've had days like that. It'll just go nonstop. And You know, it's good and bad. Obviously, means a lot of people had situations, but
Right.
it makes the shift go, and it helps you feel like you had a purpose that day. So
Yeah, I mean, when you're running back to back to back, it definitely wears on you too. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, Harry, that's freaking
without
awesome.
a doubt.
Let me. All right, Harry, I'm gonna go into another one because you know I love
Bring
these.
it.
It's.
I know you do, man.
So
I love it too. That's why I'm here again. That's why I'm here again, buddy.
Fun. I appreciate it, and it's like I really do love these stories. And it's not like one of the. I actually got a message not too long ago about like, oh, I don't want to come on and brag about myself. I don't think anybody that has come on this podcast has bragged about themselves at all. They're merely telling a story. They're like, this is what happened. And I will say everyone that's been on this podcast is humble enough to say that no one has come on to beat their chest, say, oh, I was the man that day. No. They're just telling a story.
Not.
Like,
Definitely
this is what happened. Yep. So
it's like we talked about before, you know, all your episodes, you know, I've told you, I listen to every single one of them. It's my commute to and from work. I ain't kidding. And yeah, I would have to agree with that. There's nobody there beating their chest. People are just telling a story. And, you know, for all you know, there's going to be a day. And I think you actually had it. You had the young lady who wrote a book that she fell down in a ravine. So if I recall, if you had her first. So I don't know if you had her first or if you had the rescuers, but you end up having both sides of their story. Because isn't that the one where somebody said, "Oh shit, coyote" on the radio or something like that? Or
well done, Riverside County.
I told you. So yeah, so the nice thing is, you know, to be able to get those two, and I think you may have had another one where you've had both sides of the story on there. It's unique. I mean, this is a platform where somebody's going to hear it and they're like, hey, that was me they rescued. I should call him up, because it's you know, this way you're allowing people, you're getting both sides of the story, and listening to the rescuer story, then listen to her story. That's pretty impressive. I mean, I give that young lady, she's badass. She's badass.
Totally.
You know, she said, I'm not dying out here, and so it's pretty good. It's good stuff, man. Yeah. So what you're doing is good, like everybody tells you, and like I said, so nobody's beating their chest. Everybody's giving a story. That's all. That's what it's about, man.
I love it. And I get to highlight you. That's my favorite. That's my favorite part about this. I get to highlight you. All right. So now for you, in 2015, Charles County Government Award for Life Safety presented to Harry Knight. This award is presented for your heroic performance resulting in a positive life-saving effort. Now, that's the only thing it says. But you actually, I'm going to say the lady you saved was in a car crash, and she ended up coming out to the station. The news got a hold of it. So, this is awesome. So, right now, what I'm gonna hit play to the video, so everybody's gonna hear the video right now and what that happened and how that went, and then we're gonna come back to you.
Nearly 2 years ago, a Maryland woman was injured so badly in a car accident, they gave her just a 12% chance of survival. Well, today she beat those odds. She is alive, she is well, and photojournalist James Hash brings us the emotional reunion with the people who saved her life.
I have wanted to meet the people that have really saved my life.
For Keely Harris, it was a thank you she's been waiting almost 2 years to make.
Thank you so much for letting me have this opportunity to do that. Thank you.
In August of 2013, her SUV careened off a rural road in southern Maryland.
We knew right away it was very bad.
Harris was pinned in the vehicle, her arm nearly torn off, most of her ribs broken, and her aorta ruptured. Her survival would require a miracle.
The two miracles were Ryan and Kevin.
That miracle came courtesy of the Charles County Emergency Services and a Maryland State Police medevac crew.
I'm very, very fortunate. I'm blessed.
It just reaffirms why I love what I do.
I was a medevac patient myself, so I can kind of empathize. We do the best we can in the back and hope for the best outcome. And in this case, we had a really good outcome.
Nearly a dozen people played a role in saving Harris's life that August morning. Today, she thanked them.
There's no doubt in my mind they do it every single day. They're just absolutely wonderful.
In La Plata, James Hash, WUSA 9.
So appreciate it.
Gotta love that. All the personnel involved in Harris's rescue were also recognized with the Charles County Life Safety Award. Well, a very
Now, and you're going to tell us what happened.
Yeah, so it was one of those days, typical, it was a weekend, if I recall correctly. We're just sitting around the firehouse. And when they put calls out, there's certain tones that you hear. Then you hear the station alerting system go off. So that's when at the time, I used to run with the Newburgh Volunteer Rescue Squad, which is just across the bridge from where I live in Virginia. And at the time, I think I was either the assistant EMS chief or the EMS captain. I can't remember what it was, but a lot of times, if we were running duty as an officer, we had an EMS truck, so we could run calls, assist the ambulance as needed, or if the ambulance isn't staffed, get to the station quicker to get the ambulance out and stuff like that. But we had a crew at the station. We had a fire crew, we had an ambulance crew, and I was there. We're all hanging out. Call goes out for a car accident. As we're going en route, because I was the officer going en route, they said, be advised, there's a former paramedic on the scene. We're dispatching a helicopter, partial amputated arm, patient's unconscious, so pretty much it sounded pretty bad. So I was the first unit, got there, got on the scene, although all the other ones were in very close trail. Apparently the lady had a medical emergency. I don't remember what exactly it was, but she ran off the road into a ravine and hit a tree head on, and she was in like a Chevy Tahoe or something like that. Again, the former paramedic from one of the other counties, she was there holding stabilization. I go in there, and you can only imagine there's glass debris everywhere. It's going to sound a little graphic. Her left arm was out and partially amputated. It was, for the most part, hanging on by skin and muscle and stuff like that. We had one of the paid paramedic crews that was there. They were on the scene, so everybody started, doing what they needed to do. People were splitting her arm. We were getting her on some oxygen. The fire crews were there, cutting the doors, getting her out, doing what we called a rapid extrication and stuff like that. Again, the dispatchers, based on calls they get, they can do what they call it. They can pre-launch a helicopter. If they hear a call is significant enough, they don't need us as an EMS provider requesting a helicopter. They can go ahead and start the helicopter based on the call to have them ready. So they had them. They had landed in the field down a little bit. We get her out. Again, huge mess. I mean, she had some pretty significant injuries, internal broken bones, internal injuries, stuff like that. Paramedics got some IVs, got some pain meds into her. They turned her over to the Maryland State Police helicopter. They flew her to the trauma center. Apparently, the report that was in the news clipping, I think, or in an article, even when she got to the trauma center, they gave her an 11% chance of survival due to her injuries.
Oh my gosh!
And the amount of time getting to the hospital and everything, but she did recover. And a lot of times we don't hear back from patients that we run calls on, but she survived. I don't think she was ever back to 100%, but she survived, and she reached out and she wanted to thank those crews personally. So there was an award ceremony for various things. So she was there to thank the crews that helped save her life. And like I said, a lot of times we don't get that luxury. We don't get to see after the fact. Sometimes, we'll get people to send us cards or letters. Sometimes people will come stop by the station to say, hey, you ran me. I was a car accident. You got me to the hospital. I appreciate everything you guys do. But a lot of times we don't get to see it after the fact. So when she came out, it was a pretty significant event for all of us. And they had the state police crew there. They had the medics that were there, all the volunteers that were there, all the paid people. They had everybody there for it. So it was a pretty unique experience, So when that happens, that's when it really shows us that what we do is something, again, especially when you're a volunteer or if you're a paid person, being able to save somebody's life like that is pretty significant. And it makes you feel appreciated. It was quite the experience, but it was definitely when I crawled in the back of that Tahoe. Yeah. When I crawled back in that Tahoe and everything I saw, I was like, this is not good. This is not good. So yeah, it was tough. But it was the teamwork and people, we all knew what we needed to do. The fire guys knew they needed to get a backboard and collars for us. The medics knew they got to get some pain meds into her. Somebody knew they got to splint that arm. And, I've been on calls before where it's been a motorcycle accident and their arm is in a very awkward shape. And somebody's like, hey, need somebody to splint that arm. And everybody's like, I don't want to do that. But somebody knew they needed to do it so we could get her out and get her stabilized and get her on that helicopter. It's the working and training together, is probably what helped save her life. That we all knew what we needed to do. Nobody dilly-dallied around. Everybody jumped into action, and a plan came. And when we got back from that call, we got back to the station. We talked about how good it worked, that everybody knew what they needed to do. People weren't fumbling around trying to find this. The fire guys knew they had their cutting equipment hooked up and they were cutting right away. Everybody worked together so well that's probably what saved her life, is working together.
Man, that's beautiful. It's amazing. When everybody works together like that, is absolutely amazing what we can do. And again, going from not a fatal crash, a terrible accident, to an 11% chance of survival, to walking in to meet you guys at the station, at the unit.
It was pretty cool.
Incredible. That's super cool.
It was cool.
Right on.
That's really, it kind of shows you. Like I said, we're not there to beat our chest, get the awards and everything, but we're there to help people. And knowing that when you've had somebody who was on the brink of death and you pulled them back, it really makes you feel good. It makes you feel good at the end of the day, because we run a lot of calls where we don't get that luxury. I've run older people, younger people, cardiac arrest, car accidents, overdoses. There's a lot of calls we come back from like, man, I wish I could have done something different. Sometimes you just can't. There's sometimes, there's only so much we can do. We're not always going to have a positive outcome. But when we have those positive outcomes like that, it makes up for those other ones to a degree. So it was definitely,
agreed.
It was something else. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool without a doubt.
Nice job, man. Yeah, great. Fantastic job for everybody that was involved in that. Again, 11% chance of survival to walking out of the hospital.
And that's what the trauma center, that's the percentage the trauma center gave her once she got to the trauma center. That's the chances they gave her once they wheeled her into their room. That's what they gave her. So definitely nice impressive. Job, she had a lot of injuries, but she came to it, and in the video she was quite emotional, and it was nice to be there. It was very nice that she wanted us. She specifically asked for that. It doesn't happen that often. So when she asked for it, the county made sure it happened. They made sure it happened.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So, awesome, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to another accident that you were not involved with, but indirectly. So this time you actually saw something. You were there from start to finish, but not as like working it. You weren't on call. You weren't on duty that day. Is that right?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Ironically, this was just a couple.
Let me read this real quick, because this was in the news, smnewsnet.com, and it's the headline is "Fatal Crash. Police investigate fatal head-on collision involving a semi-truck." And let's see, on Monday, December 5th, 2022, at approximately 3:55 p.m., police, fire, and rescue personnel responded to the area of 10535 Budds Creek Road in Faulkner for a serious motor vehicle collision with an entrapment. Now, again, fatal. I can tell everybody right now, like the person did not make it in this accident. But what's interesting is how you had to be a part of this. So what happened?
Yeah. So, like I said, ironically, this is only a couple of miles away from where the accident was with the lady that we were able to save. On my commute home, where I live and where I work, and where I work at Pax River, it's a very rural commute. It's a 2-lane road, Budds Creek Road, nice and quiet. A lot of times, most of my traffic is deer when it's rut season, deer all over the place. But coming home, it's the commute I do every day. This car pulls out of this road in front of me, and the first thing I'm thinking, I'm like, dude, you ain't got enough room. Why did you just pull out in front of me? It was not enough room, but I'm like, okay, whatever. You're in a hurry going somewhere. So as we're driving, the car kept drifting towards the center lane. I'm like, man, get off your phone. What are you doing? And he kept drifting and drifting. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I'm thinking, I'm flashing my lights. I'm honking my horn. And I'm like, he just kept drifting and drifting, and we kept going. It's good for a good half mile or so. Then coming from the other direction, there was a Walmart semi truck coming. And by then he was all the way over in the other lane. So I was like, oh shit, there's no way this truck cannot avoid impacting him. So I was on the phone calling 911 as the impact occurred because I saw it coming. I was literally right behind this vehicle. I'm like, oh my gosh. I had pulled over. The dispatchers, I told them, hey, this is Harry Bell Alton, head-on collision, Budds Creek Road, Crane Highway, start the assignment. And they're like asking all kinds of questions, which dispatchers do. I said, are there any injuries? I said, it's a pretty serious. I've just pulled over. I'm going over there now. And in Southern Maryland, you get to know the dispatchers and the first responders, because the nice thing about where I'm at is a lot of the dispatchers are also volunteers at a rescue squad or a fire department. So especially like when I teach CPR, I tell them, when you call that person on the other line, whatever your emergency is, odds are they've been on the other side responding to what so they know what you're going through. They can relate to it. So apparently they could tell by my voice, I was a little amped and a little, acting a little erratical, because I was like, stop asking questions. Get me help. They're like, Harry, we know we need. I said, okay. So they're like, okay, we're getting everybody coming. So I go over. I keep a medical bag in the back of my truck because, again, being volunteer, being a station chief, if a call goes out, if I'm on my way home, I might go to the station, or I might meet a crew on the scene, or if I'm traveling through an area, if I come across an accident, I'll stop and render aid, because that's just what I do. So I had my medical bag. I figured a big semi truck, his front end was damaged. He's not going to be too bad. This was like a smaller van, like a Toyota van or something like that. And so I'm going to go to the van to check. And it was quite the impact. The sounds graphic, but the engine was pretty much in the compartment, the driver's compartment. Airbags were deployed. The guy was kind of crunched in there pretty good. I'm trying to like, hey, you okay? Trying to get some kind of response, trying to check for a pulse, check for breathing, and I couldn't get nothing. Ironically, one of the other fire chiefs from my station was about 5 vehicles behind me. He comes running up. He goes, Harry, what do you got? I said, I think it's fatal. I'm trying to get a pulse. I can't tell. Somebody else who was a first responder at another station tries climbing in the other door. He's trying to get a pulse on the other arms because I don't feel nothing. Our station chief, we have people that run as battalion chiefs. They're going to run as incident commander. He pulls up, and I said, hey, I think it's fatal. So he goes, okay, the paramedics are coming. We're going to, a lot of times they'll have the paramedics come and put leads on the person to verify that they're deceased. Sometimes as an EMT, we can call it if it's obvious, but he wanted to have the paramedics verify anyway. So the paramedic comes up to me. She's like, what do you got? I said, I'm pretty sure he's fatal. He's crushed in there. I can't get no response. I can't feel a pulse anywhere. She walks up, she looks, she goes, yeah, there's, it's fatal. She goes, I can't even get in there to put leads on him. So even if they were able to cut him out, by the time it would take time to cut him out, it would have taken well over a half hour. So at that time we kind of confirmed, they call it to the dispatchers, priority 4. So then they get the truck driver out. I have him come over, sit on the tailgate of my truck, and I'm checking him out. And he's shaken up, obviously. And I looked at him and said, I need you to look at me. He goes, what? I said, no, I need you to look at me. I need you to hear this from me. I said, I was behind the car that you just hit. I said, there's nothing in this world you could have done. He slammed his brakes on. He was veering off to the right where he's going to put his truck in the ditch. I said, you did everything you could. There's nothing you could have done to avoid it. So he asked. I said, unfortunately, the person did not make it. But again, I said, it's not your fault. Something happened for that person to do that. So he didn't want to go to the hospital, but we recommended, just because he was kind of traumatized and everything, just to go get checked out. So we did everything we could. Come to find out later, it was the uncle of one of the EMTs at my volunteer station, because the EMT reached out to me. First, she goes, are you doing okay? I said, honestly, no, I'm not. Because if I'm on the rig responding on a call, I see the aftermath. I saw this from point A to point B. Unfortunately, I saw it. So first I told her, I'm very sorry for your uncle's loss. I said, I don't know what happened, but I said, if it helps your family any, I can talk to them. If it helps them any, I said, I don't think he felt any pain. So apparently after they did the autopsy, apparently they said he had a medical emergency. I don't remember what it was. I think they said he may have had a stroke. And it happens a lot. I mean, those things happen a lot. So it messed me up. I ain't gonna lie, because seeing the whole thing. I mean, I've been on, doing this stuff for 20 years. I've been on calls. I've been on fatalities from car accidents, motorcycle accidents, burn patients, kids, older people. But to see it happen was a different thing. Like I said, the dispatchers knew me. So I took off work. I called my boss at work, said, hey, I just witnessed a really bad accident. They're like, yeah, we heard about it. Because in Southern Maryland, things make the news real fast. I mean, real fast, especially with social media and everything. So they said, you okay? I said, not really. I needed a couple of days just to kind of get away from things. So I stayed at home. But in Southern Maryland, they have a critical stress debrief team. And one of the ladies that works at the 911 center is one of those members. So she called me up the next day. She goes, hey, it's so-and-so. Are you doing okay? I said, I've been better. She goes, yeah, I know. I was there. I heard you on the speaker at the 911 center. She goes, you want to talk? So I'm like, yeah, honestly, I could use a little talking just to get it out there. So it helped. We've talked about it before. In my previous incident, you've had several other people talk about PTSD. A lot of people want to keep it in, but I've been doing it for a long time. I've seen a lot of things, but that one kind of impacted me. So having the people there that knew, they knew me enough where they could tell it impacted me, reach out to me to talk, to make sure I was doing okay, was a huge help. It's a huge resource. And that's what's nice being in an area where it's a lot of volunteers. We know each other. We try to take care of each other. We see when others are in need. The people from my station, they're like, hey, thanks for what you tried to do and stuff like that. So it was good. It took a couple of days. And like we were talking about earlier, unfortunately, I drive by that crash site going to work and coming home from work. And I'm not going to lie, every time I drive by it, it's in my head still. I still picture it. I still, just like when I did my first episode with my rescue, I can still relive how this whole thing panned out, because there are certain things in life, unfortunately, a lot of times it's the traumatic ones that live with you. But I got through it with the help of people that knew I needed some help, talking to some people, knowing that I didn't want to keep it inside of me because that was just going to eat me up inside and cause emotional issues that I don't want to deal with. So for those that are out there, whether you're a rescue swimmer, firefighter, EMT, law enforcement, there are resources out there. There are people you can call. I know for a fact, Jason says it on every single podcast. You need help, you call me. You say it every single time. You know it. That's why you're smiling right now. You know it. Because we're there for each other.
We are.
I may not know, and I've told you in the previous one, because I know I told you it's kind of a downer, but it's a hot topic, But I've told you, if people get my number from Quinny, I don't care. I don't care who you are. If you need to talk, I'll talk to you. I don't care. It's just like when I was in the Navy. I told people, if you're going out drinking, if it's 3:00 in the morning, you need to ride home, you call me. Oh, we're not going to wake you up. I said, I would rather you wake me up at 3:00 in the morning than I get a phone call from somebody else. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, whether it be, military background, first responder, John Doe citizen who helped somebody out, you may see things that you might be used to, but they're going to eat at you. So there are resources out there. Reach out to those people. Because again, I've been doing this 20 years in the Navy, 20 years as a first responder, and that one impacted me. And it does every so often still. But there are people that are out there to talk to. Get a hold of those resources. Talk to people. You cannot let that stuff bottle up in you. There are firefighters, like, they beat their chest. Oh, I don't need to talk. I don't need mental health. Yeah, you do. You're going to find out eventually you're going to need it, and by the time you do that, you might be too late for help. So get the help you need if you need it. Don't be afraid. Don't think it's
Agreed.
You're uncool or you're not a real man because you got some emotional stuff going on from something you may have seen. Yeah, no, don't. Man, the way I say it is man up or lady up and say, I need help. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Right.
It's the resources are there. Use them. That's what they're there for. Because they've realized, Vietnam, they didn't know about PTSD in Vietnam. That's why a lot of these guys were taking their lives when they came home. They didn't know how to deal with what they saw. So they've realized, granted through the military stuff in Iraq and everything, these people whether it be military, again, first responder, people are seeing things they shouldn't see. We need to make sure they're mentally and emotionally able to deal with those traumas, because they're tough. They're tough, but there's resources there, so use them. Yes, that's about the best I can say with that.
Man, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing the story and again on the back end. Yeah, call me, send me a message if anybody needs to talk out there. If I can't help you, I will get you in touch with somebody that can for sure.
Yep.
So Harry will be one of them.
You say it every podcast, and I know it's words of truth that you say, because you're very emotional about all this stuff that you do. So there's no doubt in my mind, if somebody sends you a message, you're going to help them out. So
yeah,
no doubt in my mind. That's what we're there for. Whether again, I may not know you, but if you want to talk to somebody about it, go. Sometimes it helps to talk to somebody that you don't know. But sometimes you got to get it out there. Don't be afraid to get it out there. That's what it boils down to. Down to. So, but yeah, that was a tough one.
I'm again, thank you so much for sharing. I'm sorry that happened, and appreciate that one. Letting it out.
It was tough, but there's ups and downs in life. We just have to know how to deal with those downs. That's what it boils down to.
Agreed.
How to deal with it. So,
well, good on you. Everybody that was involved in that, good on you guys. It's what we do. Sometimes you get the good ones. Sometimes you have the tough ones. As long as we all know that we can call each other, that's good.
No doubt. No doubt.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. The RealResQStore.com. Your shop for all your podcast-worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to the RealResQStore.com and let your gear do the talking. Well, let me help you out, man. Let me bring it up, okay? We brought it down. Let's bring it back up, all right? Just a little bit. So you were recognized in a magazine. I actually, you know what? I don't know. It's the Medical Response Stream. Is that the magazine?
Team Medical. Oh, so the magazine was from a Navy organization I used to work at. They put out a monthly thing of different topics that the command was doing. So they put a couple things in there about this medical response team that I had put together there.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, there's actually two parts of this. I'm just going to touch on this one in particular because, and you're going to have to help me out with some of the acronyms in this because I don't know the acronyms, but so ONI, what is that one?
So that's the organization I used to work for. It's called the Office of Naval Intelligence. They're the ones that kind of do. So you remember the movie Captain Tom Hanks was in it, where they had the Navy SEALs go out, where that they hijacked.
Yes.
So they had a group of folks there that did like the intelligence support for the Navy SEALs for that evolution to occur, and all that's open source and nothing classified, open source information. So it's just intelligence organization for the Navy. They actually have a Coast Guard element there as well. They actually have a Coast Guard people there too.
Ah, nice.
Just saying.
See, yeah. We're just infiltrating you all over.
Indeed.
Us Navy rejects, we're doing all right. But one of the cool things about this, and I know we're not going numerically timeline in order here, but this is I wanted to touch on this because I thought it was pretty cool. Is it you were part of building this team. And it just so happened that let me get into it. So you guys get a call, or your department gets a call at 8:18 in the morning. Security Operations Center, the SOC, was notified of a medical emergency involving an injured contractor in the New Wing construction zone. Disaster Preparedness Officer, DPO Harry Knight, Police Training Officer, and then a police sergeant were dispatched to the scene, reported that the employee had fallen from the scaffold and suffered a broken wrist. So you go and respond to him, you help him out. That's at 8:18. At 8:23, another medical response came over the radio requesting somebody to go to the Navy Federal Credit Union. They were dispatched to the scene and found an unconscious employee lying on the floor. Then at 8:28, like literally minutes later, you guys received another call for a medical emergency at the fitness center. The team was then redirected and, upon arrival, found a faint and weak employee sitting on the floor outside the fitness center. Let's just do the math real quick here. Ready? 8:18. The third call was 8:28. That's 10 minutes. You had 3 calls in 10 minutes. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Did you actually respond to all 3 of these?
I was not, but the team that I put together was able to respond to all 3 of those. And if I didn't put that medical response team together, we would be slowly relying on Prince George's County Fire and EMS services to come and render aid, because we call the local fire and EMS anyway, but we're there to help get people stabilized. So so we got out on all 3 of those within 10 minutes because of the team of EMTs that I had put together. So where I worked at ONI, I was there. The early terms was DPO, disaster preparedness officer, but the Navy finally made it where it was the emergency management officer is what my true title was. So in that position, there's my job was kind of boring. I had to put policy in place, but unless there's an emergency, I wasn't very busy. So luckily I wasn't usually too busy, but we had a building of roughly 3,500 employees, civilians, contractors, military, the whole 9 yards, not to mention visitors. It's a pretty big organization. And I started realizing, I was like, we don't have like a building nurse. We don't have a building doctor, but we have a lot of people. And we were early on, there were people, they would be calling Prince George's County, which is the county. They'd be calling their emergency services for various medical calls. I'm like, these guys it's a busy area. So I'm like, they could be 10, 15, 20 minutes before a fire truck or an ambulance gets there. I mean, that's 10, 15, 20 minutes of somebody sitting, bleeding, diabetic, whatever the case may be. I'm like, so I knew in that building, there was a lot of people from the county that I volunteered in that were EMTs and a couple were paramedics. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to put this, so I put through my chain of command, because everything's got to go through a chain of command. I said, here's the deal. So we got all these emergencies. I've got myself and 6 other people that are Maryland certified EMTs or paramedics. I want to put a medical response team together. I want to put a medical bag together that's in our operations center, because any medical emergency, the police get the call. They would grab a bag and, they would call us on the radio, and, all the responders had radios, and this way we can render aid to people. So that day, they had a new wing under construction. So that's how the day started out. Event number 1, if you want to call it that. Guy had a pretty obvious broken wrist. I mean, I go there and it's like, that's not supposed to have been that way. So they called me on the radio. They're like, hey, we got it. He knew too, and he was in some pretty good pain. So when I said, it's not supposed to have been like that, luckily, I try to get, when I deal with patients, I try to get them to laugh a little bit. And he laughed, and then he's like, this shit hurts. But so I'm, so they called me. They're like, hey, Harry, we got somebody else in the credit union. So I'm start my, get on the radio for the other medical responders. So they go in. I think it was a diabetic issue with one of the tellers there. So they get an ambulance for her. Then they have somebody who was working out a little bit too much, because in the military, I'm retired now, so I can admit to it. A lot of the guys don't do the fitness as they should. So when it comes time for the twice a year physical fitness test is when all of a sudden it's like the rush is on. So when the rush is on, they're trying too much, and they're not in shape, and they overdo it. So that day we actually had 3 ambulances and 2 fire trucks from Prince George's County sitting out in our front area picking up patients. All three of them went to hospitals to get checked out, because obviously the broken wrist needed it, the diabetic, and then the fainted one, that they all needed to go. So we put this team together, and we got some kudos for it and stuff like that. But we've had people that were having heart attacks. We had one person having vertigo. And again, anytime I would go, or the other responders, the police went as well, because there's a report they have to do. The police have to bring the people in, because we were, one of those, not super secret squirrel buildings, but we were a secure facility, so that you just can't come walking in there. One time the lady's, she's describing what's going on. It's like, I'm pretty sure you got vertigo. So the nice thing is there is when we would help people, we'd see them at work a day or two later, so we could find out what all happened. So she came into the quarterdeck, she came into the front entrance of the building, and the police officer that was with me, we saw her. So we're like, hey, how you doing? She goes, yep, I had vertigo. So the police officer, who was a good buddy of mine, goes, Harry, how'd you know that? I said, because I've had vertigo before. When you've had it, you know when people have it. The world is spinning and it won't stop no matter what. So we've had that. We've had people having massive heart attacks. Ironically, the husband of one of my medical responders was one of our patients. He was having a heart attack. So when he went to the hospital, he bypassed the ER. He went straight to the OR.
Wow.
So we actually, and again, these were, so the police officers, they needed to have CPR training. So you being a CPR instructor, and for those that don't know, there's Heart Saver CPR, which is geared for John Doe citizen. You learn how to do adult, child, and infant using AED. Then there's BLS Healthcare Provider, where you learn how to do 2-person CPR, use a bag valve mask, and do things different working as a team. So I got it, where the police officers, they were hesitant at first, but they learned it paid off, where I trained them, instead of just Heart Saver, I trained them in BLS CPR, because when you got other people helping you, working as a team, it works so much better. And it paid off one day, because there was a day where a groundskeeper was right outside our fence line, and technically it wasn't our property, so we weren't responsible. But one of our employees went to our police at the gate and said, hey, there's somebody unconscious. They go there, wasn't breathing, started CPR. Second person showed up. They started doing 2-person CPR. The police officer and the cruiser showed up with an AED, because I planned accordingly. We had AEDs in the building, and we had an AED in the cruiser outside in case something happened outside.
Nice.
Got him, shocked him, got the guy back. When the fire department showed up, he came back because he had a full recovery from going into cardiac arrest. They did a big thing. The police officers all got awards for it, because they saved his life, because he had big plans for his family and his grandkids to go to Disney. And if he didn't get saved that day, Disney was not going to happen. So It was a huge deal. So it goes back into that teamwork and knowing there's a need for that resource for that organization, and it worked out. And the nice thing is, again, you being a CPR instructor, one of the things I tell people, once you have to do CPR, male or female, bare skin from the waist up, t-shirt, bra, you got scissors, everything's out of the way, because you got to get your hands in place. You got to be ready for that AED. So the police, so we actually had it on one of our security cameras, the whole incident. So when I was off the day it happened, so when I came back in, the chief of police wanted to get everybody together to look at the video to see how everything worked. So they're doing everything, and they're doing CPR. They didn't have the guy's shirt off. So when the AED came in, they had to stop what they're doing, cut the shirt. And I said, hey guys, first of all, I'm not taking anything away. You saved the guy's life. Everything was great. But remember when I tell you, when I taught CPR about, once you have to do CPR, bare skin, so that you get hands in place and AEDs ready to go. They go like, yeah. I said, that took a couple seconds. It's still a good outcome, but just positive critique. That's why you do it. And the one guy with the AED goes, he goes, I was hoping that I was hoping they were ready, but we had to stop for a few seconds to cut the guy's shirt off to get the AED pads on there. But yeah, so put that medical response team, it paid out quite well. And even the 911 services for the county, they were always very appreciative. When they came in, I had there was a generic paramedic patient sheet that I had filled out. So when they came in, they had name, address, social security numbers, a set of vitals, their medical history, allergies. Here's your patient. Here's what happened. Here's a sheet. Boom. So they were in and out. It made it easier for them, which is what it's all about. Because again, I knew they were a busy area in that where we were at. So the more I could help them, it was better for them. It was better for us in the long run. But yeah, so they still have, I think there's only a couple of the people there that are part of that, because I left there a few years ago for a different position, but they still do it. I don't think it's running as smooth as when Harry was running the show. I've actually had people say,
of course it's not.
I kid
Harry.
you not.
It's definitely not.
Quinny, I could get witnesses on here that tell me, dude, when you left, that whole thing just fell apart. Because there were people there. Matter of fact, one of the girls from the Coast Guard Watch Center that was there, she had a life-threatening emergency where she had 3 EpiPens she kept in her purse. 3, because she had some serious allergies. So when I would brief people when they would come into the organization, I gave an OPSEC brief, but I also talked about emergency preparedness. So when we got done with that, she said, man, I'm glad to know there's a response team because this is my medical situation. So she had peace of mind knowing that they were there, that people, as long as they were working that day, people were there to help her if something did happen. And then I went the extra mile, went to the Coast Guard group that worked with her and said, hey, this is an EpiPen trainer. If she has trouble breathing, this is what you got to do. Check the date. Make sure it's good. Pull that blue cap. Remember, when you pull that blue cap off the back, it's like a loaded gun. Keep your thumb away from it. I had the trainer said, pop it in their leg. Keep it there for 10 seconds. Let them rub it. But I said, if you got to use this pen, making sure 911's on the way. So all her coworkers were trained. So they all had that, it gave them a comfort that there was people that were there that were ready, and again, going into, scene safety. We had one time it was a diabetic incident. So, a lot of people don't know diabetics happen two things. If they have low blood sugar, they're very groggy. They're kind of out of it. But sometimes if people have a high blood sugar, they're very high strung and they're like out of control. So apparently this guy's blood sugar was through the roof. So we go in there and said, hey, I'm Harry. I'm the emergency manager. What's going on? And all of a sudden he had the look on his eyes and he started charging at me. So the police officer I was with intercepted. And that's when Harry said, all right, he's charging. Harry's backing up. I'll let the cops get him stable again. And I'll come in and give him some glucose, check everything, make sure everything's good to go. But yeah, so even at work, we have some scene safety issues just because you never know what's happening with medical people. But yeah, I remember that day quite well. I was like, yeah, he's charging at me and the cop. I'm backing up. Scene safety. My safety is first. So, but yeah, so it was, that team, it paid out quite well. It was something that we needed. So I ended up calling myself, I was the building token doctor because I was, we didn't have a nurses station there. A lot of people wanted it, but they couldn't justify the need for it. I'm surprised, especially after that day with 3 calls in 10 minutes, that they didn't have a nurses station. But the government, that's how it is sometimes. Yeah. So, yeah, it was pretty good stuff. At the time, I would get more emergency calls at work than my volunteer station is. So, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Man, that's great. We're talking great stuff. That's amazing. Nice job putting that whole thing together. Having people have that peace of mind. They're like, oh man, this is in the background. This is great. So nice. Yeah. I like that.
It helps them out quite a bit.
I do want to touch on one more thing before I let you go, because I think this is really cool and a unique thing is that you mentioned it earlier. So your son is a full-on paramedic and he was like, oh dad, you need to go get your paramedic. You're like, yeah, no, I'm good. But what's cool about this is you and him have had the opportunity to run calls together on the same truck. So father and son on the truck. And I love that. And one of the pictures you sent me, the entire back of the ambulance is just destroyed. So all I want to know is a couple memories that stick out to you working with your son. And I love my kids so much. I love being with them all the time. So the fact you get to, and even I'll go a step further, I love working with my dad too. So it's a blast for me. So what stands out to you?
Yeah. So that particular call, like I said, they do this thing when people go through to be, certified pyrotechnic fireworks people that do all these displays. So they do the thing. It's kind of like their graduation. It's in the big field in Southern Maryland. And it brings in a lot of people where they do all the different groups. There's like 10 or 15. They do all their displays. So that particular night, apparently there was a young lady that indulged into some kind of stuff. We're not sure exactly what stuff it was because she wouldn't confess it to us. But ironically, that picture, that was in our new ambulance that we had at that station, fairly new. Luckily, I was driving that day. But apparently, she had been on the ground, just freaking out. We thought it was just seizures or something like that. So we get her in the back of the ambulance. The police are like, what's going on? We're like, we're not sure. We think it might be a seizure. It might be an overdose. We'll get her to the hospital. We're like, okay. So I was driving, thank God, that day. My son was in the back with a couple other EMTs. Apparently, this girl just started projectile vomiting everywhere. So that picture was when they had hauled her into the ER, and I was like, yeah, that's a memory. So my son, he's like, yeah, that was a whole lot of fun. I was like, yeah, I'm glad I was driving that day. But we've had like the station that I'm at now, there's several times, because my son, he's an EMT, he's in the process of getting cut loose as a paramedic now. So like we talked about before, I'm very proud of him. I love, he joined the station I'm at now because I was there, because he wants to do stuff with me, which is great. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've got other kids that are in Florida, Colorado, one in Northern Virginia that, his birthday was last weekend. So we're going to go get together with him.
Happy birthday. Shout out.
So I'm proud of all my kids. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've had 2 kids in the Navy. I got one in the National Guard. My daughter has been a godsend. She's done great things. So I'm proud of all my kids. But the fact that my son Samuel is near me and he's able to do, enjoy this, doing this first responder stuff with me. So there are times we run plenty of calls together. He prefers to drive because, he's doing that stuff at work all day. He goes, Dad, I'm already teching at work. I don't want to do it. But he's very good at what he does. I mean, some of the other members have seen him, so it's fun. I mean, there have been many times we'll be running duty, and I'll get a picture of us. I'll post it on Facebook. He said, "Yep, it's the father-son duo out here saving the world." But yeah, it's fun doing that with them. It's something, like I said, his mom did it. His grandfather, actually, his great grandfather did it. Southern Maryland does a thing now that I mentioned him. Every year they have a convention, and his great grandfather started this stuff early on with one of the stations. So he passed away. So they do a thing every year to kind of honor the volunteers that have passed away. So they're going to do a memorial for his great grandfather. So it's definitely in his blood. I kind of came into it the roundabout way because I met his mom after I started it. But it's fun. It's unique because not a lot of people, unless you're in this volunteer community, can say they do those things with their dad. And he enjoys it. I mean, he's 22 years old. He likes doing things. Granted, don't get me wrong, there's times he wants to have his time, which is fine. But yeah, it's neat to be able to share that with him. So yeah, it's fun. It's definitely fun. And, when he got done with the EMT, excuse me, when he got done with the EMT class, he has to go through a process to get turned over. So, I'm what's called an FTO, field training officer. So I have to evaluate, and so he needed a couple of assessments, and I've got one picture where we ran a car accident, and I'm in the back with him. I took a picture of him, back of the stretcher, so you don't see any patient for any HIPAA violations or nothing like that. But he's getting all the information he needs. We take the girl to the hospital. So everybody's like, "Did you favor him on your assessment?" I said, "Nope." I said, it doesn't matter who it is, but he's good at it. He had a rough start at his EMT, and if he listens to this podcast, he will admit it. But he has come a long way. He's going to be a very good paramedic. He's in the process of getting hired by the Navy government side of the house as a paramedic. But I'm proud of him. He's good at what he does, and he enjoys it. I mean, like I said, he's at one of the stations up in the DC area that he volunteers at to put time in as a firefighter. So I'm proud of him without a doubt. He likes doing the stuff. He does it as a paid guy, but he's got a passion as a volunteer as well. So I've enjoyed seeing him develop in the past 6 years to where he's at now. He's come a long way. Definitely proud of him, without a doubt.
That is fantastic.
So
nice. Good stuff. Good for him.
Good stuff.
I want to emphasize it again. Like, I love hanging out with my dad. Like, my dad does construction. He does restoration work, steeples, domes, towers, and I love hanging out with him. I
remember you talking about that before. Yep.
Yeah, super fun. And in reverse, I love hanging out with my kids. I have a blast with all 3 of them. We're all doing something different. I've gone on vacations with them. It's just a blast. So I love the fact that you get to share that with one of your children, like right now. That's great.
Yeah, so, it's cool. It's definitely cool, without a doubt. So,
but all right, Harry, I've had you on for a long time. This has been an absolute pleasure for me, but I like to end it with a good piece of advice. So we had some advice from you on your last one, and that was, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was out of the Navy and rescue swimmer stuff. But now that we've talked on all this EMS stuff and everything you've done, advice, and including the CPR, which I know is a good passion of yours, but what advice would you pass on?
Just do things that you love to do. If you are interested in getting CPR trained, and possibly very highly good chance having an impact on somebody's life, do it. If you want to get trained in being a first responder, if you're in an area that's a volunteer, reach out to your local fire department. They pay for the training, EMT, paramedic, firefighter, EVOC, how to drive an emergency vehicle, go woo-woo and all that kind of stuff. Reach out to it. Don't be afraid if there's something that you're like, oh, I don't think I can do it. even if it's joining a department like where I'm at, there's a lot of administrative duties that need to get done that can't be done without people doing things. But don't be afraid to take a chance on something that you might be interested in, because you might find it a passion that you love to do, and you might find the positive impact you have on somebody else's life. Again, we talked about it. You're not doing it to beat your chest and toot your horn. You're doing it because, hey, I just helped save somebody's life. That's pretty freaking cool. Yeah. How many people can say they've done that? Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
So
no,
don't be afraid. I mean, there are things out there, and then, again, for the folks that are in the first responder field and stuff like that, if you see something, man, don't be afraid to ask for help. Nobody is man enough or too much of an adult to not need the help. I've known several people that didn't reach out for help, and unfortunately, it took a toll on them emotionally. And a couple of people that I've known have taken their lives because of traumatic things. They didn't know how to deal with it. So reach out there. I know we've talked about it before, and you've had several people talk about it. They say, they got the veterans thing. They estimate veterans alone, 22 people a day take their lives.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's because people don't realize they need the help. So, and then on the same note, keep an eye out for your fellow military people, whether it be Coast Guard, Army, whatever branch it was, and also for their first responders. Keep an eye out for your fellow brothers and sisters. If you see something doesn't look right, talk to them. Don't be afraid to start that conversation. Like, hey, Billy, what's going on, man? You've been down and out. Like, I'm not like for me, where I work at, I've been busy the past 3 weeks where I haven't been able to be at my volunteer station. So one of the fire chiefs texted me the other day, ironically. He goes, hey, haven't seen you at the station. You okay? I said, yep, I've just been overwhelmed at work. And when I'm home, I just need to have some downtime. He goes, okay, good. Just checking on you. So
love it.
That little text is enough to make sure somebody's doing okay. It doesn't take much. So don't be afraid. If you see something doesn't look right, reach out to them, talk to them. And if you need to get in their face, get in their face. And if you think it's something really bad, be a thorn in their side until they fess up that, yeah, something ain't right. I'm glad you reached out to me. So, but yeah, so
cool.
But as usual, man, like I said, we talked about it before. We may stray. I never knew we'd be on here this long, but you love doing this, and I love listening to it. So hopefully, whoever listens to mine will enjoy it as much as I do. Like I said, you had the young lady on from the Coast Guard recently. That girl, yeah, the life Ashley, I think was her name.
Woo, yeah.
So like everybody else says, man, Quinny, keep doing what you're doing with these podcasts, man. It
yes,
inspires us to do what we're doing. For the old farts like me, and yes, I'll say old because this year's going to be 61. So yes, I admit reality is coming in. When I listen to these guys, their rescues and stuff like that, it brings me back to my Navy days, the good old days. And it's nice having those memories. But just keep doing what you're doing, because every podcast you got, there's something out of it that I get a kick out of it. Like I said, when you had the gentleman with CPR, I was like, oh yeah, man, I got to get a hold of Quinny. I was walking my dog. He's like, I can relate to this guy. I know what this guy's going through. I know what he's talking about. So just keep doing what you're doing, man, because we appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Roger
and it
that.
makes my commute through Southern Maryland so much better, dude. It's like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm at work. Okay, shit. Now I got to start my crappy part of the day. And like I said, if it's a long one, I just fire up part two. I just fire up part two on the way home, buddy. So I keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate it. You may not realize it, but it's appreciated. So just keep doing what you're doing. And like I said,
Roger
you
that.
end up out in this area, anywhere, O's game, Richmond conference, whatever.
Okay.
We'll go have a beer.
Yeah.
I got the view. I got your back, brother. I got your back. All
I'm
right.
there. I'm coming. I'm coming.
You got it. I'm ready for you, man.
Harry, thank you so much.
It'd be the highlight of my day if we connect for a beer. It'd be the highlight of my day. I kid you not.
Oh, me too. Are you kidding me? This would be great. Then we keep going.
Yep.
We'll just then you can't stop it, because then there'll be beer
Exactly.
involved, and then we'll just keep going and going.
Yeah, we'll make sure my son is there, and he's not planning on driving, so he'll be the designated driver.
Okay.
So there we go.
Okay.
We'll make sure we're hooked up, buddy. So, all right, brother. Well, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. This has been a total pleasure for me. I look forward to seeing you in the very near future. And just Yeah, when it happens, man, we're going to have a good time for sure.
We are. It's going to be good. It's going to be good stuff, brother.
Awesome. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go.
Now, it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode. TheRealResQStore.com, your shop for all your podcast-worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to TheRealResQStore.com and let your gear do the talking. And attention all rescue professionals and tactical athletes. Ready Swimmer and the Real ResQ have teamed up to bring you the ultimate solution in tactical athlete training. Developed by military rescue professionals, our team boasts over 60 years of combined experience. Elevate your performance both physically and mentally with our individualized programming. Contact us at ReadySwimmer.com or through TheRealResQ.com and unlock your full tactical athlete potential. The question is, are you ready?
When 9/11 happened, I was working in the personal security office in the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in Washington, D.C., and our security department was actually on a floor tour of how the currency got printed. And we walked by one of the TV monitors and we saw the first airplane hit. We were actually close enough to the Pentagon that we actually heard and felt the Pentagon impact. I think it really showed me that I enjoy what I do, and I think it brought a lot more camaraderie with different organizations across the country for fire and EMS and law enforcement. We all learned a lot, and I think we learned to work better together. It really helped step up a lot of pride for people in the country. Here in D.C. and even in Pennsylvania, people were coming out of the woodwork to help other people out. We're a good country, and we try to do good things. We just got to work together to make everything happen good. My name is Harry Knight. I'm the EMS captain at the Newburgh Volunteer Rescue Squad and Fire Department in Charles County, Maryland.